have been. So the weekend generally dry, but we are going to see a change on Sunday. It looks like with more cloud and some outbreaks of rain spreading into parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight with me, Mark Dolan. With the Conservatives at each other's throats and potentially destined for opposition, party grandee and best-selling author Jeffrey Archer gives sage advice on how the Tories can turn their fortunes around. He joins me live. Plus, we'll debate whether Liz Truss was right to ban King Charles from the COP27 Environmental Summit. And there'll be full-throated opinion from political firebrand Anne Widdecombe and social media sensation Zuby. A busy show. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. on GB News.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hey, welcome along on tonight's Mark Steyn Show. The legendary editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, is here for an almighty romp. Romp is a grand word from the heyday of tabloid headlines. Remember those back in the days when Tory ministers were being caught in a three-in-a-bed sex romp every other week? We're not going to do a three-in-a-bed sex romp tonight. Kelvin and I were up for it, but the budget wouldn't stretch to a third person. So we're going to do a romp through the current scene instead. Migrants. Ghastly woke coppers as the shock troops of punitive progressivism. And even the reason Kelvin wasn't on this show last week. Leilani Dowdy is with us. We're going to talk about something rather disturbing, the connection between a supposedly respectable transgender children's group and a paedophile rights organisation. We have a shock study from Queensland on the old jabber, jabber, jabber. Also, is there an official definition of disinformation? And do you have to be dead to wind up in the morgue? Plus, the most vital part of the show, all the more important when we live in the constant swirl of a blizzard of lies, your comments and questions. Give it your best. You can be as personally vicious about me as you wish. I can take it. Well, actually, I can't. I'm riddled with self-doubt on the best of days, but Kelvin Mackenzie can take it, so you can always pick on him instead. Send us your comments, email us, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can Twitter us at gbnews. But first, as ever, the latest headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Mark. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. In a developing story in the United States, an active shooting situation is unfolding in Dearborn, Michigan. Local police say shots are being fired at the Hampton Inn Hotel. Troopers and officers are working on clearing the area. They're describing the situation as extremely dangerous and urging the public to stay away. We'll bring you more details on this story as we get them. Prince Harry and Elton John are among a group of people suing the publisher of the Daily Mail over what lawyers are describing as gross breaches of privacy. A warning for those watching on TV, the following footage contains flashing images. The lawsuit alleges that Associated Newspapers hired private investigators to secretly place listening devices inside people's cars and homes. It also claims that private phone calls were recorded and sensitive medical and financial information obtained using impersonation and manipulation. The mother of murdered teenager Stephen Lawrence is also a claimant, along with Elizabeth Hurley and Sadie Frost. Associated Newspapers has refuted the claims, describing them as preposterous. 3-hour blackouts could be introduced across the UK this winter if the country fails to secure enough natural gas. The warning from the National Grid electricity system operator comes as Europe struggles with restricted energy supplies caused by Russia's war with Ukraine. The Liberal Democrats are calling on the government to hold an emergency Cobra meeting to address the issue. However, the Prime Minister says the UK can get through the winter.
We're working very hard on energy security. It's one of the reasons I'm here in Prague today. We have interconnectors with our European partners. We're working on more gas supplies. We're working on building out nuclear energy, building out wind energy, so we do have a secure supply of energy.
Well, earlier on, Liz Truss called on European leaders to unite, saying that Russian aggression has caused the biggest crisis since the Second World War. She's urged the group to address the fundamental causes of energy and migration challenges. The Prime Minister also held a meeting with her French counterpart, describing President Emmanuel Macron as a friend and saying they'll work closely to create energy security. At least 38 people have been killed, including 22 children, after a former police officer opened fire at a childcare centre in the northeast of Thailand. Police say the gunman had been discharged from the force last year and just hours earlier had appeared in court on drugs charges. The gunman also killed his wife and his child before taking his own life. On TV, online and on DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Back now to Mark Steyn.
Prime Ministers come, Prime Ministers go, but some things never change. The so-called online harms bill was put on hold at the start of the last Tory leadership race 3 months ago, but it's still out there, and apparently they are keen to bring it back. On Monday's show, David Starkey said that we had been governed since 1997 by one continuous, unbroken new Labour government. And the result is the wreckage you see all around. If you want more of that, support the online harms bill and its disturbing legislative innovations such as the concept of, quote, legal but harmful, which the already too powerful regulator, Ofcom, will be granted even more powers to police on the internet. The online harms bill will cement in law the central reality of British media in the 21st century, that every aspect of our public discourse can only be framed within the approved official narrative. You heard about the vicar's wife arrested, bullied and intimidated by the shock troops of the Surrey Constabulary over her internet posts, and you were thinking of maybe tweeting about it. Ooh, steady, steady, that might be legal. But it could also be considered, quote, harmful to the trans community. You were thinking of saying something about who's raping thousands of little girls in Telford, Oldham, Rotherham, Rochdale. Oh, yes, that might be technically legal for you to express an opinion on, but it could be super harmful to members of the Pakistani Muslim community. You were minded to weigh in on the hordes of, quote, asylum seekers being ushered into the express check-in every night by the Royal National Lifeboat Institution's one-way cross-channel water taxi service. Oh, yes, that is still just about legal, but it's also totally racist and certainly harmful to members of the Sudanese warlord, Somali jihadist and Albanian gangster communities. Britain is broke and kaput, and one reason for that is the lockstep groupthink enforced by Ofcom and social media these last 3 years. It would be nice to have a proper accounting of just how disastrous it's all been, but the First Minister of Wales says no need for Wales' COVID inquiry as world has moved on. I wish. Instead of moving on, we're enshrining the madness in law now and forever. Headline from our friends at the Conservative Woman. California doctors must back COVID, quote-unquote, consensus or be criminalised. That's true. And the governor behind that bill, Gavin Newsom, is quite likely to be the Democrat presidential nominee in 2024. Because with every passing day, it's clear the Dems are getting ready to ditch the dead husk of Joe Biden and the somewhat more animated husk, but still entirely brain-dead, Kamala Harris. So President Newsom will be doing what he's done to California nationwide. By the way, it's not just those crazy libs in La La Land. A similar bill is before our Commonwealth cousins in the Queensland Parliament, criminalising any dissent as, quote, disinformation. Does His Majesty's government, whether here or down under, actually have a definition of disinformation? The word is bandied relentlessly. Here is a lady called Daria Dugina. Who is she? Well, the government of the United Kingdom described her as, quote, a frequent and high-profile contributor of disinformation in relation to Ukraine and the Russian invasion of Ukraine on various online platforms. Ooh, an online disinformer. Can't have that. Well, you'll be pleased to hear Miss Dugina got hers. Her car was blown up in Moscow in August, and she wound up in 40 million pieces all over the tarmac. 29 years old. Yeah, baby. Blow it a kingdom come. That's the only language these disinformers understand. The Russians said that the Ukrainians had assassinated her, but that was dismissed as just more Russian disinformation, so pay no attention to it. Oh, sorry, breaking news, headline from yesterday's New York Times. Look at this. US believes Ukrainians were behind an assassination in Russia. American officials said they were not aware of the plan ahead of time for the attack that killed Daria Dugina, and that they had admonished Ukraine over it. What? They admonished the sainted Zelensky? I don't believe a word of that. Between the Vogue photo shoots and the war zone strolls with Bono, he's got no time in his diary for an admonishing session. But set aside the billions we're lavishing on the Ukrainian government so they can fully fund targeted assassinations of young women on the streets of Moscow. Here's the real point. In August, it was, quote, Russian disinformation to suggest that Ukraine had assassinated Miss Dugina. 6 weeks later, it's accepted fact. The only disinformers were the guys who told us this was disinformation. And so it goes. So what will you still be free to do? Well, if you're a purported late-night comedian, you'll be free to do lame-ass propaganda stunts in support of the 37th booster shot. Here's Stephen Colbert of the American network CBS taking Dr. Fauci, the J. Edgar Hoover of public health. He's been in his job for 55 years, since the Johnson administration, if you remember that far back. Here's Stephen Colbert taking Doc Fauci to get his latest jab.
Are you worried at all about the new booster? No. No?
No.
Are you worried? You're not worried that the 5G chip that it puts in you is going to interfere with the 3G chip from the last one?
Bill Gates and I decided we're going to take the chips out now. We're not going to.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Funny. I'm corpsing. I'm doubled up. Oh, no, wait, I think I'm coming down with sudden adult death syndrome. We interview people on this show whose husbands, parents, children are dead from this vaccine. There's Vicky and Charlotte right there, widowed in their 30s. But to the highest paid and longest serving bureaucrat in the United States government, it's all just fodder for comedy sketches about paranoid conspiracy theorists. State-compliant comedy. That's no laughing matter. If you want more of this, support the online harms bill and help add to the ever-lengthening list of topics on which only one side of the story can be told. Trans insanity, migrants, serial child gang rape, and yes, public health and the right to informed consent to what the state wants to stick in your body. While it's still legal to be legal but harmful. We're going to get into it with Kelvin McKenzie, Leilani Dowding, two doctors from Queensland. Oh, what's next after the online harms bill? How about the in-skull harms bill? Klaus Schwab, the sinister Teutonic megalomaniac, hiding in plain sight as a sinister Teutonic megalomaniac, is looking forward to a world where he doesn't have to wait for you to tweet because he will already know what you are thinking.
Can you imagine that in 10 years when we are sitting here, we have an implant in our brains, and I can immediately feel, because you all will have implants, and we measure your brain waves, and I can immediately tell you how the people react, or I can feel how the people react to your answers. Is it imaginable?
Oh, no, Mr. Bond. I expect you to be chipped. Let me know your thoughts. GBViews at gbnews.uk. The Tories have been butchering it up in Birmingham all week. Lots of tough talk. Whether it's followed by any actual action is the critical question. Kelvin McKenzie is back with us, and we're always pleased to see him. Kelvin, you've had a lot of tough talk over the many years of Conservative government, and it hasn't actually made a jot or tittle of difference on the migrant issue. Do you think it will this time?
No, I don't. No, I don't. They're in a shocking position. I think Suella Braverman wants to have a go. I think she'd like to come up with a good idea. But a good idea almost certainly involves sending people back somewhere. And what's quite clear is the French are very delighted to say goodbye to the Channel migrants and have no intention of us returning them to the folk whence they came. So on that basis, I see no action. And the issue about this now is, honestly, Mark, this year there will be 30,000. In fact, there's 33,000 already. Right. It may get to 50,000 by the end of the year. These are huge numbers. I keep on saying these are massive, massive numbers, and nobody says anything about it. The things that Liz Truss does say seems to lead to a larger and larger majority for her competitors. The thing she doesn't say, which is, I am going to solve this, would actually secure her position probably for another 5 years, possibly for another 50 years. The politics of the country are completely wrong at the moment.
Well, the numbers are incredible. I think it's likely to hit 60,000 before the end of the year.
It could hit 60,000, but that would be the worst of the worst. These are huge towns. This is a comparatively small island. This is not the United States. It's not France. It's not even Germany. We are a smallish country that cannot deal with this. Not only that, we are a country without any money. We know that's official. I don't care whether you're a socialist government or a conservative government. We haven't got any money. How is it that we can afford to fund up literally what are now thousands of hotel rooms all over the country to house these people?
Right.
And, you know, everybody knows that they have no right to be here. And yet you get nutcases like, I don't know, James O'Brien or various other leftists. Have you noticed, has anybody from the Labour front bench come up with a solution to this? Their one idea is basically that they can go to any embassy anywhere in Europe and sign up. How many people would then do that? What, 20 million, 50 million, 100 million? The whole of Africa? The whole of the Middle East? Everybody would do that. It's a mad idea.
Absolutely. It's fascinating. I mean, people are very interested. There was a slight twitch of the numbers in Northern Ireland vis-a-vis Catholics and Protestants, and that got tons of coverage. I don't know why, if you want a creative solution to the Irish problem, I don't know why you just don't move all the people landing on the southern shore of England to Ulster, and it won't be Catholic or Protestant, it'll be wholly Muslim, and they can, and it'll be something Mr. Gladstone never foresaw, and an out-of-the-box idea. I want to get your thoughts, though. We interviewed... Yeah, carry on quickly. Yep.
I was just going to say, well, of course, in Texas, they've done that idea. They've said, look, there's a whole load of Mexican migrants come here. They have no right to be here. And I tell you what, why don't New York City and Chicago take them? And that's what's happening. They're being bussed up there. So your idea about Northern Ireland, in which you throw one more religion into the melting pot, it can't be worse than what's been happening over the last 100 years. It could be the solution. The Steyn solution to our migrants.
Yeah, that's right. Instead of a sectarian divide, we'll have a sectarian three-way. That'll be like a three in a bed sectarian romp. I think that's how they put that. Now, Kelvin, I wanted to ask you about the Surrey police and their decision to make an example of a supposedly transphobic vicar's wife in the manner of her arrest. And you have been contrasting it with the way they handle other cases, such as an attack on some poor fellow in Weybridge when he was just coming home from work.
Right, so it's important. So Weybridge is quite a safe-ish area, middle-class neighbourhood. Nothing much goes on there. So I don't know anything about this. I'm having dinner with a friend of mine in the middle of the summer, and he tells me that one of his neighbours was attacked by a gang of three who they said, hand over your watch. He said no. So they took a knife and they chopped it off him, and in chopping off him, cut him so he had 34 stitches. I didn't know anything about this. So I contacted, being a nosy bugger, right, and a journalist, I contacted Surrey Police, and I said, I don't know anything about it. They then say to me, we have issued a statement about that. That statement, all it said was there was an attack at 11 o'clock at night involving 3 assailants who wanted a watch. That's all you knew. You didn't know, A, that they were armed with a knife. You didn't know that there were 34 stitches. And you didn't know, actually, this is a matter of discussion. I mean, you know, some people say you should report it, some people say you shouldn't, that they were a black gang, okay? So there were 3 important things, which you would have thought a place like Weybridge would have been all over, and they should have been, but it was disguised. Right. Then you move to the lady that you had on your show the other night. What happened in that case? Well, what happened in that case? You get 2 police officers come around knocking at the door. This woman is a priest's wife, mother of 5, journalist, right? And some Twitter-style spat has blown up. They can afford to send 2 police officers out. Do you know how difficult it is round this way for any burglary, any serious event, for a police officer to turn out? It's literally impossible. It is literally. No. You ask anybody in the Guildford area, you ask anybody in the Weybridge area, the Walton area, the Hersham area, when was the last time actually they saw a police officer? No matter what has happened, if you've had a bike nicked, you've had your car nicked, you've had a lawnmower nicked out of it, you don't see anybody. But you get involved in some Twitter spat, what happens? Not 1, but 2 police officers turn up. And if I remember rightly, even the officers, in order to make sure that this lady, right, a mum, right, doesn't shut the door on them, almost robber-like, right, They put their hand on the door. I am absolutely astonished. Now, the interesting thing is, so I started wading into all this a little bit, a bit of Twitterati. So I asked whether the Surrey Crime Commissioner, who actually held a public meeting here only 2 days ago, I asked her, right, what is your view about this, right? You would have thought, you know, that she's supposed to be there on behalf of the public. I'm the public, you're the public, I'm a local person, I pay, I noticed that the police preset goes up every year, right? What have I heard? I've heard nothing. And I repeat tonight, just in case, after all, Miss Townsend, who is the Crime Commissioner, she's a political hack. She was in comms, so she's keeping her head down, right? She was in Westminster comms before she got this job. I say to her tonight, Miss Townsend, where do you stand on this? Do you think it's right that police officers turn out in force for a Twitter spat? And I hope the answer is no, but I'd like to hear what she says.
Well, I'm sick of seeing policemen barging their way, forcing their way into the homes of women, as they did with this priest's wife and as they did with our friend Samantha Smith in Telford after she had the temerity to complain about West Mercia Police. Just quickly, Kelvin, one more thing. You weren't here last week because you were a little under the weather. You revealed the cause of your being under the weather, and you basically, they all took the tire iron to you in the back alley of Twitter. You went and you went and got your whatever it was, your 37th jabba in the COVID arm.
American jab. I have the American jab, and this was my third jab, or it might be my fourth. And actually, I was a lot worse with the jab than I've had COVID twice. And by the way, once I had it COVID, I went to Saudi Arabia to give it to them. And that didn't work, by the way. And so, yes, it was a lot worse. The funniest thing about it all is the way that Twitter then found something I tweeted about 6 months earlier, basically indicating that I thought it was a good idea that in Singapore they were rounding up the anti-vaxxers, right? And, of course, everybody then piled in. I agree. Look, if the facts change, I change my opinion. I am not the only one who's had the jab and actually been worse than the COVID. I know locally about 3 or 4 people. And secondly, it always seems to be Moderna. So are the Americans actually trying to put the UK on the flat of its back? I give it to you then.
No, because the AstraZeneca would have. Did you hear what he just said? He's actually lost count of how many jabs he's had. He doesn't know whether it's the 3rd or the 4th. Once you get to the stage where you can't remember how many jabs you've had, it's time to quit it. You need to quit cold turkey on this, Kelvin. We're going to have more on that particular topic a little later, but I do appreciate it, and I'm glad I was worried over the weekend. I didn't want you turning out to be the latest SADS victim or whatever, as many of the Twitter types were goading you on to be. So I'm glad you survived to make it to the show this week. Take care of yourself. Look after yourself. Let me know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk. We'll get to your comments next. Plus, Surrey police may be hot for the full trans, but elsewhere transgender activism is looking darker and darker. Leilani Dowding will join me. Oh, and how would you like to be shipped to the morgue before you're dead? Don't worry, it's not some new NHS cost-cutting programme. Well, actually, it may be. But we're going to tell you all about it in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. My lamb hates it when I shake his tail, which is why I do it all the more. That's all coming up in just a moment.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
GB News is the People's Channel, so let us hear what the people have to say. We actually did a poll. We want to know, do you support the online harms bill and why? Oh, wait a minute, it's gone down a little. It's gone down a bit. 13.8% say yes. That's how popular this is, you crazy sicko government. 13.8% say yes and 86.2% say no. Do yourself a favour, Liz Truss. Try doing something conservative. This isn't conservative. Opinionated Alien says, tell me who is qualified to define online harm and I may listen. Until then, nope. Alison, on the other hand, is in favour. She says, but they need to be able to prove children's ages, or it could be They're not going to do that. You know, people are just typing into the ether every second, billions of people around the world. All it means is going to be an algorithm, and the algorithm is actually going to be what decides whether you get tagged and cancelled or not. So it's going to be AI, artificial intelligence, which is very stupid when it comes to this. Wait, one more. Rack says, you're not being quite clear. It has been amended so that adults can say the same online as face-to-face. Oh, that's very generous of our rulers, isn't it? However, given the left blocking so many on various platforms, including Twitter, where does it get us? Yeah, if you want more, if you think the conversation has been open enough these last 3 years, misinformation, disinformation. Oh, that woman who got blown up, the Ruskies said it was Ukraine that did it. That's disinformation. You can't say that. 3 months later, or 6 weeks later, it's fact, according to the government of the United States and the New York Times. This is rubbish. Scrap it. Toss it in the garbage and salt the earth wherever you bury it. OK, let's move on to another jolly topic, paedophilia. Hey, what's the big deal about it? As you'll know if you watch this show, it's not a big deal to the corrupt constabularies in towns up and down the spine of England. And it's not a big deal at the Mermaids Transgender Children's Charity, where one of their trustees, Dr. Jacob Breslau, turns out to have given a speech to a paedophile dignity group. And that's to say, the group Before You Act wants paedophiles to have the right to live, quote, in truth and dignity. That's Dr. Breslau there. He has a most fascinating bio on the faculty pages of the London School of Economics website. One of his interests is listed as being, quote, the queer life of children's desire, which is interesting. Doesn't seem quite to have a lot to do with what his official job position is over there. But I don't want to get into any more trouble with Ofcom than I already am. So I should add, of course, The paedophilia is absolutely nothing to do with advocating the mutilation of children's bodies by chopping off girls' breasts and rendering them sterile. They're two quite different things. One abuses children who cannot give informed consent to sex, and the other abuses children who cannot give informed consent to bodily experimentation. They're two quite separate things. Our pal and yours, Leilani Dowding, is here. What do you make of this, Leilani?
Mark, there is such a sinister agenda going on. So last week, mermaids actually got investigated because they were giving chest binders to young girls against parental consent. So that's obviously, as it says, they bind their chest so their breasts don't show because they think they want to be young boys. And then, of course, this came up this week about Dr. Jacob Breslow. Now, there's definitely an agenda going on here because Gays Against Groomers, which is an American coalition of gay people against PayPal have called it a transgender group and banned them at the an anti-transphobic, transphobic group, and banned them at the same time as the Free Speech Union, Toby Young, and Us for Them. They all got banned at the same time. Now, look at the name, Gays Against Groomers. They're not transphobic. They're simply saying, stop pushing Lupron, which is used to chemically castrate sex offenders, onto children as a puberty blocker. So, that's what they're saying. They're saying, and then they talk about all these 14, 15-year-old girls on social media showing their mastectomy scars. Now, you've seen it. You've brought it up before. This is what's going on. This is what's on social media. And, we've seen the Tavistock Clinic closed down. And last week, I actually went to a premiere called No Turning Back, about the Tavistock Clinic, and I spoke to the director, and I said to the director, what inspired you to make this? Why did you want to do this? You usually make documentaries about motor cars. And she said, my 12-year-old son came back from school and said during sex education, he was told that he could be born in the wrong body. Now, she said that as a parent, she was mortified that this is what's going on in school. And a lot of people don't know. I spoke to my parents about it and my sister, and they had no clue that this goes on. And unless you've got a really strong relationship with your child, you would probably not know this either. So there is definitely a sinister agenda going on, and it's all kind of linked together. The Gays Against Groomers, the anti-paedophile group, is getting called transphobic and against transgender people for speaking out for children. And then you've mentioned California and Gavin Newsom, and I lived there 17 years. California courts have now allowed taken custody of minors that want to transition whose parents won't allow them. And the Victorian government is also going to allow gender transition without parental consent. So there's a lot here to unravel. And it's all kind of linked, and I probably didn't put it together very well, but there's a lot going on within this.
No, you actually did put it well. I mean, I think when I listen to groups like Gays Against Grooming, in some strange way, this is at odds with the increasing acceptance of homosexuality, because many of these girls and boys, left to their own devices, might actually just turn out to be perfectly well-adjusted gay men and lesbians if they weren't shanghaied into physical mutilation. I want to go back to that 12-year-old boy whose mother directed this film you saw. You told me months ago, Leilani, that when you were a little girl, it was rather a vivid image, which is why I haven't forgotten it, but that when you were a little girl, you liked to go to the bathroom standing up, as it were, to be all delicate, to be delicate about it. Well, But you laugh now. But if you were that age now, and the doctor and the teachers would say to your well, wait a minute, why haven't you got her transitioning? Why haven't you got her on puberty blockers? Why aren't you getting out the chest binders? And I mean, that's how insane it is now.
This was it, Mark. I was such a tomboy. I thought Barbie was like the worst thing on the planet. I liked Transformers. I liked Action Man. My friends were boys. I didn't fancy them. I wanted to be them. We had peeing competitions, like literally. But I was probably like 10 years old. I didn't know. I wanted to climb trees. Then I grew out of that phase. Most people, it's like dyeing their hair pink or whatever. That was my little thing. And then when I was 16, I think I was like 15, 16, I got my school to start a rugby team. And there was a Bournemouth rugby club for girls because I just thought netball was really boring and I didn't like hockey, so I wanted to play rugby. And they did that, and we had a girls' team. And I know they would have said to me, look, you're definitely Leilani, you must have been born in the wrong body. Think about it. This happens. And again, going back to that documentary, No Turning Back, there was a guy on there called Richie, and he said that when he was young, he liked ballet and flowers, and they told him that he was kind of in the wrong body and pushed him into hormone blockers. Now, obviously, he was a little bit older, but this does happen to children. But he's specifically in this documentary saying how then they have a different name for it, but they castrated him. And then they amputated his penis. And he has regrets now. He said he was fast-tracked. And he woke up and he just was like, what have I done? What have I done? So, this is something that's going on. It's irreversible. And the worst thing is if you speak out about it, you're labelled a transphobe. So I'm expecting Staffordshire Police to come knocking at my door any moment.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely disgraceful, and I don't think Leilani would have made a very good bloke. I think it's much more sensible to have kept Leilani as a woman. I actually quite liked ballet when I was a boy. I wouldn't want to have be shanghaied into having my penis removed just because I happen to like Swan Lake.
Billy Elliot now. Oh, sorry. I was going to say, if they were to remake Billy Elliot now, the story about the boy who wanted to be a ballerina, they would probably tell him he should have been a little girl. So, that's the way it's going. And I think it's really important parents find out what's going on in school and what's going on around, because we don't want to end up like California. They might think, the mermaids were just sending out chest binders, but the next thing, it could be puberty blockers, or it could be genital mutilation, gender affirming surgery without parental consent.
Yeah, no, there's no end to it if we go down this path, and we're destroying a generation of children in encouraging this. Thank you very much, Leilani. It is always great to see you. We have a fascinating new study out of Queensland, and we're going to get to that in just a moment, coming up on the Mark Steyn Show. Don't go anywhere.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, We're
on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
We talk about the COVID vaccines because the supposedly respectable people, like the creepy BBC presenter Matthew Sweet, host of Free Thinking, insists we're not allowed to, and they report us to Ofcom for not following the official fairy tale. In less deranged jurisdictions, the story evolves. The Swedish authorities have ceased recommending the vaccines for anyone under 18, the Danes for anyone under 50, the Norwegians for anyone under 65. But in Britain, that's no reason not to double down on the bonkers. Headline from the Daily Express. Should booster jabs be mandatory this winter as COVID cases soar? If you really want an answer, only if you want to boost even higher the UK's excess mortality numbers. Connie Turney from the University of Queensland and Astrid Leffringhausen join us. They've just published a review of the Australian experience with the vaccines in the Journal of Clinical and Experimental Immunology. It's basically focused on Australian statistics, but its points are of more general application. Connie, let me start with you. You point out that although everybody who's tried to tweet anything contradicting the official narrative will know that they're told then by Twitter or Facebook that the vaccines are safe. But as you point out, the Australian medical regulator says on the very website that actually it's not in a position even to be able to say that.
Yeah, I mean, it's still just registered. It's not properly registered. It's still in experimental stage. They're still collecting data from it. So you can't say it's safe because it's not properly registered.
No, so until they've actually had long-term results, that Twitter, that Facebook, that government announcement that these things are perfectly safe simply isn't true. They're not in a position to know that. Astrid, let me ask you about one of the points that has come out from your paper. The mRNA, normally when you get a vaccine, I think I'm right in saying this, if you get the mumps or measles vaccine and they stick it in your arm, it stays in your arm, which is why you still have a little slight pock from some of this stuff years later, because it stayed there. But the mRNA vaccines, they enter in the arm and then they travel all around the body.
Yes, that's correct, but it's probably more to do with the nanoparticles that are, in case of Pfizer and Moderna, the code of the mRNA. Essentially, what they have done with these vaccines is they have devised something like artificial viruses, and they get taken up. I mean, they go first in the adrenal glands, so we're talking about your lymph nodes, and they are taken up by immune cells. And since they travel around the body through the lymph system and also through the blood, then you end up with the mRNA vaccines being distributed all over the body. It's not exactly the fact that all the other vaccines stay exactly in the position where you have the injection. But other vaccines are actually not genetic information that instructs your body to produce your own antigen, your own proteins. Other vaccines are either the sick-making agent, like the virus, for example, but attenuated, so weakened, so it can't really make you sick. Or it is part of a virus, like a protein. That means you give a defined amount of this antigen, not an instruction to your body to make antigen without any kind of kill switch attached. So you basically, with these mRNA vaccines, you don't know when your body stops producing more of this antigen. And that is one of the really dangerous parts of this vaccination system.
No, and as you say, that's very different from something like the polio vaccine. Connie, do you think, in fact, that meets the definition of a vaccine? I mean, they call it a vaccine because we're all supposed to know what the word means. But as Astrid has just explained, this thing behaves very differently.
Well, a vaccine is supposed to be you get a certain amount of antigen into your body. The body makes the antibodies, and then you have protection for at least a year. We're not having protection for at least a year. We're now at the fourth booster. No. We don't know the amount. So normally when I do vaccine trials, I do it in animals, but when I do vaccine trials, I know exactly how much I put in of the antigen. And like Astrid pointed out, we don't know. They say there was a study done that we have this for several months, so 60 days. The study went only on for 60 days. So for 60 days, we're producing these spike proteins, and the spike proteins are the toxin. That's why we're seeing basically so many side effects. Wherever the nanoparticle ends up, that's where we're seeing side effects. And that is unfortunately in the brain as well, and in the heart, so in many organs.
No, so it gets in there, it can go up here, it can go to your heart, and as you say, you don't know the quantity that it's made. So, some guy it might produce, half an ounce, and it's not a big deal, and another person might go crazy and be producing tons of it. You raised an interesting point there, Connie, and I'd like to ask you about that, Astrid. If you've got COVID, you then have a natural immunity. I think your paper says, from COVID-1 all those years ago, SARS, the natural immunity would be durable and last for 12 to 17 years. Now we're jabbing people every 3 months. Are these vaccines actually impeding natural immunity, Astrid?
Well, there's a discussion going on about that. It looks like the nanoparticles themselves are toxic as well. And there is also a study that shows that the spike protein is not necessarily only presented on the surface of cells that have taken up the mRNA. The spike protein also migrates into the nucleus and has some interactions with the apparatus inside the cell that produces other proteins. So it actually interferes or interacts with the DNA. So there have been indications that this could actually reduce the capacity of the immune system to produce new antibodies, which means while the system is overrun with the spike protein that it keeps producing, depending on which part of your body takes up the mRNA vaccine, other parts of the immune system are simply shut down, because there is simply not enough. This is actually getting very complicated because you're going into molecular biology and looking at how new antibodies are produced. This is actually quite a complicated process that goes is about a cut and paste inside the genome for producing new antibodies. This is something that's happening inside T cells and B cells, the lymphocytes, or basically your white blood cells, your immune system. But this is
I think
it's impeded.
No, I think that's... You use the phrase, which I've heard actually a lot. I've heard more in the last year or so than I've heard in the rest of my life. Antibody-dependent enhancement. What actually does that mean in the context of the COVID vaccines, Connie?
Well, that basically means that... hang on, how do I phrase this?
Do you want to take it? Do you want to take the question, Astrid? You give it a go, Astrid.
Yeah. Huh? I'm quite happy to. So normally, when you have an infection, your antibodies are actually specifically directed against your, let's say, infecting agent. In this case, it would be the spike protein. The problem is that the virus, especially COVID, same as some other viruses like the flu virus and maybe dengue virus, is constantly mutating. So, and one of the things that is mutating more than anything else is the spike protein. It's a very, very big protein, and it is sticking out. So it's sort of an ideal target for vaccination. But because it keeps mutating, the antibodies you produce after getting vaccinated against the original version of the spike protein, which is the Wuhan version, we're talking about a virus that is long extinct now. These antibodies are now not neutralizing anymore. They're not killing the virus. They might bind to it, but not very well. And this, unfortunately, means the virus can more effectively be taken up by your immune cells without the immune cells actually killing it. So the virus actually gets help infecting cells by your immune system because the antibodies are not really fitting the virus anymore.
That's incredible to put it that way. Thank you, ladies. The conclusion of your paper, this is an official paper, it's all peer-reviewed, but the conclusion is sobering. Quote, sharing and accumulating knowledge is the most important part of science. The question arises when and why this process of science has been changed. No discussion of new knowledge disputing the safety of the COVID-19 vaccines is allowed. Who gave bureaucrats the means to destroy the fundaments of science and tell scientists not to argue the science? Indeed, let us stump it out. I'll do one quick stump question. What is it? Sharon says, where do you get your ties from? Actually, they're made from an outlying branch of Poundland on Sark. And the migrants crossing the channel, always, when they come over each night, they always stop at Sark. The RNLI pulls into Sark and they pick out a tie for me for tonight's show, and they're it. OK, we can do another one, I think, because Dan's not in the studio. Black Sheep says, what are the winning lottery numbers for this Saturday? Just a minute, it's coming to me. X372PY. Winning lottery number. OK, that'll do it. Dan Wootton is here to... Oh, no, it isn't Dan. It's not Dan Wootton, it's Mark Dolan. Dan, where is... How did that happen?
Listen, I am the world's number one Dan Wootton impersonator. Listen, we're very excited about tonight's show, Mark, because we're going to talk about King Charles. Of course, long live the King, but should he stay out of green politics? Why does Britain seem to hate the rich? We'll debate that with Anne Widdecombe. And the world's best-selling author, at least one of them, Jeffrey Archer, on the current state of the Tory party. We're live at 9.
I can't wait to see Jeffrey Archer. He's always terrific value. And that is Mark Dolan with the best late-night show in telly, all coming up after the weather. Stay safe, stay free.
Evening, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Friday offers some fairly typical autumnal fare. Bit of sunshine, a spell of heavy rain moving south and some gusty winds. Low pressure to the north, high pressure to the south, and in between plenty of isobars. The winds coming in from the west, and this weather front in particular bringing some wet weather tonight across parts of Scotland. That rain could be fairly heavy, some blustery conditions as well. That rain will push into Northern Ireland and southern Scotland by dawn. Bar the odd shower further south, much of England and Wales will be dry. Be some clear spells as well, but enough of a breeze to stop temperatures falling too far. A milder night than last night. Double digits to start Friday for most urban areas. It will be quite a wet start for parts of southern Scotland and Northern Ireland, and this zone of rain sinking southwards, turning things fairly wet quite quickly across northern England, parts of North Wales, before heading into the Midlands and South Wales come the afternoon. Quite a narrow band of rain, so it shouldn't last too long, but it could be pretty intense, followed by a mixture of sunshine and blustery showers. Ahead of it, East Anglia in the southeast, mostly dry for much of the day, quite warm again, 18 or 19.